Good morning and welcome to the Thrifty Winter Kitchen from Maryland Snap Ed. I'm your host, Krissa, and this is our weekly moment to talk about cooking satisfying, healthy, hearty winter meals, but without spending more money than needed. So if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know if you're from Maryland, list your county that you're joining us from. If you are from outside of Maryland, let us know where you're joining us from as well. So we'll take questions and comments throughout, especially if you have ideas that might benefit others who are watching. Please add those to the comments. So throughout this series, we kind of did a Thrifty Holiday Kitchen series through December, and now we're talking more about winter meals in general. We've been revisiting a sort of three-step process to save money in the kitchen. And so that is plan ahead, shop smart, and reduce waste. And through this part of the series, a lot of what we're talking about centers on the sort of plan ahead aspect, in that cooking with what you have or the things that you buy frequently, that your family uses frequently, so you're not buying unusual ingredients that you're not going to use all of. And the way we're approaching that is talking about how to cook when you don't necessarily have a recipe and you're just working with what you have, learning the sort of basics of different types of dishes or how to combine foods to make thrifty meals. So we are joined today by Lynn Rubin. Lynn Rubin works in the Snap Ed State office, and she is going to talk through I think a really fun approach to using one ingredient in a lot of different ways. So welcome, Lynn, and let us know what's cooking in the Thrifty Kitchen today.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be part of your Thrifty Kitchen series because I try to be a thrifty cook myself. And so it's really nice to share some of these ideas with you and to hear ideas that you all have. So that's why we've got that chat box. So please do share your thoughts as we go through this. We are going to talk about one of my favorite time-saving, economical foods to purchase and to bring home and really be creative and use what I've got on hand. So thank you for that introduction. You set me up perfectly, Krissa. We're going to talk about the wonders and the flexibility and the economic nature of rotisserie chicken. Krissa and I were planning this, and we were talking about 101 things to do with one. I would love to share 101 ways, but we only have a half an hour, so I'm going to share actually 3.5.
So the interesting thing about a rotisserie chicken is they can actually be cheaper than buying a raw chicken that you would roast at home, which you may not have noticed if you haven't price checked them.
Yeah, I did a little price checking when I was purchasing, and actually this rotisserie chicken was about $7.49. And when I went to look at the whole chickens in the meat case to purchase and bring home and cook myself, that same weight of a chicken would have been about $8.50 or $9. So I'm saving money and I'm saving time buying this yummy chicken that is already cooked and juicy and ready to do a whole bunch of things.
And they are delicious. Yeah. So if that sort of makes you scratch your head, why would the ready-to-eat chicken be cheaper? Grocery stores a lot of times will use they'll cook the chickens and sell as rotisserie chickens to avoid losing ones that are approaching their expiration date. But they are delicious. But even at $7, that's not a small ticket item in the grocery store. You can just bring it home and serve it as a main, accompanied by various sides. But what we are really going to talk about is combining it with other inexpensive ingredients that you might have already on hand to stretch it into multiple meals, so that $7 gets you a lot further.
Exactly. So we're going to stretch it pretty darn far today. And I do want to say also, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've noticed in my grocery store that often, like on Friday night, they'll have chickens for $5 or they'll have 2 for 10 or something like that. So you may even, be able to stretch your budget a little farther. And if your budget allows, you may be able to buy 2, take them home and do some batch cooking so you can freeze. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So shall we get started?
Let's go for it. What are you gonna make out of this magical chicken today?
Rolling up my sleeves. All right. So we're going to kind of go fast and furious here, right? Because we've got a lot of chicken ground to cover. So I'm going to move my rotisserie chicken out of the way for now. Sometimes they come in a bag like this. Sometimes they come in a plastic container. So just make sure you keep everything that's inside that bag or plastic container. All right, let's start with our first recipe, which is a recipe for chicken tacos. And I've got everything here to show you to make this quick and easy. I have taken my rotisserie chicken apart. I have pulled as much meat off of the bone as I can, and I'm going to use it in all of our recipes today. This particular chicken I wanted to measure so that I could let you know yielded about 4.5 cups of chicken minus all of the bones. So that's pretty good. I took the skin off and I discarded that because, you know, trying to be healthy and not consume too much fat. So I took the skin off and I discarded that. So you'll see I've got the chicken here. This is about a cup or a cup and a half of chicken that I took right off the bones. Don't throw the bones away. We're going to use those later. I have added some flavor to this to give it a little bit of a taco night kind of flair. And I have a bunch of different things to show you that can season your chicken so that when you make these different dishes, everything doesn't taste the same. And we want to make sure that, you know, we've got some variety in our meals so that no one's saying chicken again, you know, so we've got some variety. So in this particular case, you could do lots of different things. I keep these little packets of taco seasoning around. I try to find the ones that are lower in sodium. So this one is 25% less sodium. This one is 30% less sodium. They put these on sale often for $1 or less than $1 a piece. And they're a great way to just warm up your chicken with a little bit of seasoning. If you don't have the seasoning packets, using things from your pantry, garlic powder and chili powder, maybe some chili flakes if you like a little bit of heat. All of these things are great flavor enhancers. I went the really easy route and I opened a jar of salsa and I mixed my chicken with, you know, maybe a quarter cup, half a cup of salsa. So that's going to give me a lot of flavor. It adds onions and peppers, all kinds of little jalapeno sometimes. All kinds of yummy things to flavor my chicken. I could also use enchilada sauce. I've got some of that. That would be great flavor in my chicken. And so all of these options are going to give me great flavor. So here's my chicken. I also
Could you hold that up, Lynn, a little? Can you just kind of hold that up, angled towards the camera a little, the chicken, so we can see?
Sure.
Just like, yeah, so you went from plain rotisserie chicken, and just by mixing in the salsa, you have a really delicious looking taco filling with that chicken.
Yeah, totally different flavor, and it just took me about 2 seconds, which was great. Now you're saying, where's the rest of the chicken? Well, I've got a lot of chicken reserved for other uses. I want to feed my family, so I'm looking at, you know, here kind of making dinner for 4, and I want to stretch that chicken farther, just as Krista was saying. How am I going to do that? So in this case, I've got some fat-free refried beans. These just come in a can. Sometimes they have reduced sodium ones, and this is going to supplement the chicken. So I've got 2 sources of protein going here, the chicken and the refried beans. Don't have refried beans? You might have a can of black beans in the house. That'll work too. So you would just rinse and drain these and use these as extra protein for your dish. So super quick, let's just do a quick show and tell. I'm going to spread some of the refried beans right here in the middle. And then I'm going to add some of my chicken, but I don't need as much because I've got the refried beans. Let me just tidy up here because chicken is going where it wants. These are the smaller corn tortillas that I think are especially nice for kids, these little street taco sizes. And then everybody can just add what they want themselves. So a little cheese is always good. We've got some diced tomato. I had these small Campari tomatoes here, which are super, super sweet. Kids love them. So I'm going to put a little tomato, a little bit of shredded lettuce. You could also use cabbage or spinach. So many possibilities to make a taco. And you can see, you know, that's one already. I barely dented my chicken. I could probably get 8 tacos, no problem, out of the chicken that I have.
Wonderful.
So
Yeah. And And we did post a link to a taco recipe that we have from our Eat Smart database. We're talking all about sort of no recipe recipes that you don't necessarily need a recipe for. But I know some people like to have something to look at if you're not as comfortable in the kitchen. So look at that as a starting point. But what we're doing is we're modifying it to add chicken and totally play with it based on what your family likes to add to their tacos. So that looks wonderful. I would eat that for lunch.
There you go. Well, guess what I'm going to do when this is all over? I'm going to have it for lunch. So there you have it. And that's great, you know, for lunch, for dinner. Taco Tuesday has become so popular, but I think tacos are great any night of the week. And so I hope that you'll try that, and I hope that you'll put your own little spin on it.
Cool. So what else are we going to do with this chicken?
You ready to go to recipe number 2?
I am.
All right, this is pretty exciting because I thoroughly enjoy the utility of a casserole and all of the things that I can do. This particular recipe, and I'm going to just go ahead and be brazen and show you the almost finished product. This particular recipe, you know, when you make a casserole, casseroles have either a creamy or a saucy element. They typically have a protein element. Maybe it's tuna, maybe it's salmon, canned salmon, ground beef, canned chicken, turkey that's left over. And they typically have a starchy item like rice or pasta. And then this is a great way to use up either frozen vegetables, canned vegetables, or some vegetables you may have left over from dinner the night before. So all of that comes together to make this marvelous mishmash of deliciousness, and it goes right into your oven and comes out great, makes the house smell good, and it's a nice, warm, comforting meal for everyone. This particular recipe this is a chicken and kale casserole recipe that Krissa is going to share, I believe. And it took about 2 cups of chicken, so I'm still working out of my same rotisserie chicken. I diced up an onion and some garlic. I sauteed that. The surprise ingredient here that makes the creamy cheesiness is cottage cheese, fat-free cottage cheese. So lucky for me, this was on sale because it uses actually a large container of cottage cheese. And you can see it in here before I bake it, and that makes it nice and cheesy and good. I cooked the pasta ahead of time. This is whole wheat pasta, so I cooked it and I drained it, and then I mixed everything together to make this casserole. And I want to put a couple of finishing touches on it because I don't know about you, but I like that creaminess underneath and then the crunchy, crusty, cheesy topping. Anybody else like that part of a casserole?
Count me in on that one.
You're out on that. So I've got a little bit of Parmesan cheese, and that is what the recipe does call for on Eat Smart. So I'm going to sprinkle on some of that. So there's some more cheesy goodness, as if we didn't have enough, right? And then if you happen to have it, a little crunch on top is good. I have some of these panko breadcrumbs that are really, really crunchy. If you have a little bit of either tortilla chips or potato chips left in the bottom of the bag, you know those crumbs that settle to the bottom, throw those on here. If you have a few crackers left in a box, crumble those up and throw them on top. The panko is great because it just gives a nice little crunch. I don't need a lot of them, you know. And then my secret weapon for even more deliciousness is to take a little cooking spray. This one happens to be a butter flavored spray, but you could use any of them, canola or olive oil. Give it a good shake, and then try not to shoot the breadcrumbs across your kitchen. But by spraying this, it's really going to get crusty and crunchy on top, and I'm not adding a lot of extra fat. You know, I'm able to really control that. All right, so as if this were not exciting enough, you may wonder where this one came from. So this recipe actually made so much, I was able to make 1 casserole to freeze, and I made one that I'm going to pop in the oven shortly for my lunch today. So I'm going to do the very same thing. I'm going to put on a little cheese. I'm going to put on a few breadcrumbs. And then this is going in the oven, and this is going to make the house smell wonderful, and everyone will come for lunch. So there we go.
So Terry shared that she's used spinach instead of kale. Wonderful swap-opportunity there. And that's delicious. And I love, so this one does follow pretty closely our recipe that we posted, the chicken and kale casserole. But I love how Lynn was describing sort of the anatomy of the casserole. What's your sort of filler element? What's your creamy element? What's your vegetable protein? And then what's your crusty, crunchy topping element? So, I think she gave great ideas for how you can adapt this based on what you have.
Yeah, use whatever you like. I happen to love collard greens, but now we're facing a lot of things either being or not being in the store lately. It's kind of a interesting adventure. So they did not have any frozen collard greens, but I had frozen kale in my freezer. So I just threw the bag into the refrigerator overnight to let it thaw, and then it was chopped and ready for me to use, which is so convenient. I'm going to pop this in the oven behind me. I would love to hear, thank you for already starting to share. Did you say that was Terry that shared her tip?
That was, yes.
Yeah, so if anybody else, I challenge you to share a casserole combo. So think of your creamy, saucy thing, think of your starchy thing, think of your protein, and think of your vegetable thing, and share your combos in the chat. I'm really curious to hear what you're thinking of making at home. Think of what you've already got on hand. Now, this casserole, because this recipe made so much, I am going to freeze this one for later. So it's not cooked. I've got everything ready to go, including the crunchy topping and the cooking spray on top. I'm going to cover this with foil nice and tight. And then I've got, this container's from the dollar store, and it comes with this handy plastic lid. And on it, I've written what I'm freezing, the chicken kale casserole. I did this in January, and I've got the baking instructions. So if I'm on my way home from work and it's been a frantic day and I need to phone somebody at home, text them and say, please take this casserole out of the freezer and put it in the oven. The instructions are right here. They can get dinner started without me, which is very exciting. So I would encourage you to do that. You're going to bake it the majority of the time with this foil on top, not the plastic lid. They'll have to remove that. With the foil on top, and for the last 20 minutes or so of cooking, remove that foil and let it get all nice and brown. And when you see it's brown and bubbly, it's done. So not only do I have a casserole for lunch, I'm putting one in the freezer for another time. This is fine to be in the freezer for a couple of months. Nothing will happen to it. I've got it packed up really, really well. Are we still working from the same rotisserie chicken? Yes, we are. Very exciting.
It has lived many lives already.
It has, and it's not over yet. This is the amazing super chicken. All right. So we're going to move on. Did we get any good casserole combos in the chat?
We had Jessica offer that she would like to add mushrooms to this, to add a little substance there.
I agree with that. And the interesting thing about mushrooms, thanks for that, Jessica, is that mushrooms have, apologies for going back and forth a little bit, mushrooms have a very meaty-like texture. And when you add them to soups and casseroles, it really does provide, if you don't have a lot of meat going into something, it really does provide that meaty texture, which is delicious. All right, who's ready to make chicken stock in a flash?
Absolutely. We've talked about this in past episodes, so I'm glad we're doing a little deep dive on it.
Yeah, let's do it. I've got my soup pot. It's almost always on the back burner of the stove. Because I'm always ready to cook up a pot of something and share it. And the soup pot is just a wonderful way to do that. Okay, we're starting with an empty pot. Just going to share that. What I've done, now this is not beautiful, but it's delicious. So bear with me. I know it's morning and we're going to be looking at this. This is what remains of the rotisserie chicken after I've taken just about all the meat off of it that I could. I've got all of the bones in here, the wings and such. And then there is this gooey kind of gelatinous business that is usually at the bottom of the bag or the container. Don't be scared by that. That is some of the cooking juices that have kind of coagulated a little bit. And that is one of the flavor bombs going in this soup. So I've saved every little bit out of the bottom of the container. And all of these bones and everything are going right into my soup pot. Let me just show it to you now because you'll be able to see the goo that I am speaking of. Can y'all see that?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I've got my bones and my goop. And the other thing that I do, and some of you might do this also, is I keep a stock bag in my freezer. And as I'm cooking throughout the week, the month, I have vegetable scraps. I have the chicken bones from things that I've made. I have herbs that might be getting a little bit tired, fresh herbs that maybe I'm not going to use in something else. And I add them all to my stock bag. So in here, I've got just about everything. I've got celery leaves and parsley stems and carrot, you know, when you peel a carrot, those little carrot trimmings, all of that is going right into my stock. I even have the peel, the outside, that papery skin of the onion, and that's going to lend great color to my stock. So you've got my onion skins, and I want to add a little bit more flavor, so I've got an extra onion. Let me reorient myself here a little bit. I've got an extra onion. And, you know, how easy is this? I'm not even peeling this onion. It's just going right in the pot.
And one of the best side effects, you know, we talk a lot about the joy of food being more than just taste. It's also smell and texture. When you have a simmering pot of stock on the stove, it's going to be there for a while, and it just makes your whole house smell so good.
It does. It does. It's just, and in this cold weather, it's the best. So apologies for the noise. I just smashed a few cloves of garlic. I'm not peeling them. In they go, the papery skin and all. We're wasting nothing, right? You talked about reducing waste in the kitchen. Well, here we go. Now, as if that wasn't it, so here's all my goodies I've got in my pot. I'm going to add in a couple more flavor enhancers that I really like. A bay leaf. They have a very herby kind of fresh smell. That's going in, and also some whole peppercorns. You can use ground pepper as well. I have a pepper grinder, and I just unscrew the top, and I grab a few peppercorns out. In those go. Another really great flavor enhancer I like is celery salt. Now, it does have salt in the title, so I'm not going to add any additional salt right now, but I am going to shake in a little bit of celery salt, maybe like a half teaspoon or so. This is not really scientific, as you can see. And it really does make for a delicious, delicious stock. So what's missing?
Well, that doesn't look like soup to me, or something that could be made into soup.
Call me crazy, right? So a couple of different things. You can just use plain water, and I've got a quart of water here. So a quart is 4 cups. So I'm going to put those 4 cups of water in. And I also happen to have a box of stock. This one is almost full. I was cooking something else. And I thought, well, let me just use the rest of this. This is also, when it's full, about 4 cups. So right
kind of
here,
fortifying it a little bit with
yeah,
some.
exactly. So I'm adding some flavor from the get-go. If you want to use all water, totally fine. Use whatever you've got on hand. And I'm going to take a look and check myself here, because what I really want to do is I want to make sure that everything that's in the pot is just covered with water by a couple of inches. So I'm almost there, but it looks like I need a little bit more water. Remember, when you're making soup, it's going to sit on the stove for a while, and some of that liquid is going to cook out. So right now, I'm starting with about 12 cups or 3 quarts of water, and I've got everything covered in the pot. And it's probably going to cook down. I'm going to lose about a cup or 2 of liquid, but that flavor is going to continue to concentrate. And as Chris has said, make the house smell great. So I'm going to pop it on the back burner. and I'm going to set it and forget it, which is great. I want to kind of bring it up to a boil or a simmer, and then I'm going to turn the heat down. So I'm going to get that going. It's going to cook for probably 2 or 3 hours. You know, just while I'm doing other things, I don't even have to think about it. I can leave the lid on, keep it on low. When I feel like I've tasted it and I've adjusted the seasonings, I would say don't add salt at this point, because again, that liquid is going to cook down. And the more that liquid evaporates, it concentrates the flavor of salt. So it's best to really season this with salt at the end of your stock cooking. Make sure you have it the way you want it. You can also not add any salt until you're ready to use it in a particular way, and then you can season it then.
Right, because you might be combining it with other ingredients once you ultimately strain out all those solids and then you have your broth. You're going to be combining it with other ingredients, and depending on what you're making, that those things might be salty. So you can always adjust that seasoning at the end. Like you, I actually keep a bag in my freezer for stock, but I add my bones to it. If I'm not ready to make stock as soon as I'm done my chicken, I freeze those bones, and then I tend to accumulate a lot over a period of time. And then I make a huge batch. If you have a nice big pot, and then I freeze it. So I actually like to freeze it in smaller quantities, because I might not need it all. Like, you know, if you buy one of those quart size containers, you might not use the whole thing. You can always freeze the remainder of those too. But yeah, I like to freeze my portions, and that's free broth if you're using the bones. I had another thing to offer, but now I can't remember what it is.
There's so much to talk about when you're making stock. And just a note, you know, you can use the bones from a turkey that you cook. You can use the bones from a roast that you cook. So you can make a beef stock. You can also just make a vegetable stock with all of these vegetable trimmings and herbs that you saw, and you don't need any meat at all. Just let it go on the back of the stove for a few hours, and check it every now and again to see if you've got the flavor that you want. When you do, you're going to go over to the sink, and be careful, because, you know, if you're like me, you've really loaded up your pot and it's pretty heavy. You're going to strain it through a colander or a mesh strainer like this. The finer that the mesh is, the more little particles of things it will catch. The most important thing is to just make sure there aren't any bones going into whatever it is you're going to make. So you're going to get a nice clear stock, and you can use that stock in all kinds of different ways.
So Terry shared that she likes to portion it into muffin tins when frozen, and to then put it into freezer bags. So that's great. Another way to get those smaller portions. What I was going to say is that the idea of bone broth or you know, broth in general is sort of having a moment. And it's kind of funny. It's one of those things people started talking about as if it was this mystical, new, magical substance. But this is, you know, something our grandmothers have been doing for centuries, and maybe grandfathers too, is really using every part of that chicken or whatever protein you're cooking. And so that you're getting the goodness from that. And I think a lot of times people now are talking about, all these sort of benefits it might have for your health, and whether or not that's, you know, your motivation, it's really just a delicious thing that you really can benefit your cooking. If you can cook beans in your homemade broth, you can, you know, it's a base for soup. But it's, you know, really, there's nothing special or new or magical about bone broth. It's just the same old broth our grandmothers have been making on the back of the stove for centuries.
Yeah, it's all about that bone to liquid ratio that kind of, you know, makes it really fortified with the protein and the collagen and all of those things. So, and I have noticed, you know, bone broth is quite costly in the store, even as compared to regular stock. So saving all of these bones that you have and making it yourself means that you are saving lots of money. And honestly, the one that you make is going to be way more delicious than anything that you could buy in the store.
So now we have some delicious broth, or you will in a couple hours. What are you going to do with that and the rest of the last stand for your rotisserie chicken?
Yeah, we're in the home stretch, right? So we've used that chicken, you know, just when we thought it had nothing else to give, it gave again. Right into our stock pot, and so it's going to impart all of that flavor. Once I have strained out my broth, I could freeze it just like Krista was talking about. And Terry, I hadn't heard about the muffin tin idea. That's genius. I had only heard about ice cube trays. That's so smart. So you can freeze that stock. Again, you know, use your, I've got my freezer tape here, and I've got a permanent marker. And so I just jot down whatever it is. I label it, because once everything is frozen, it becomes a mystery. So the label will tell you when you made it and what it is, and sometimes what to do with it. So once I have my stock, I might freeze some, but I'm thinking it's winter time and I really want to make a yummy soup. So now that I have my stock and I put it back in the pot, but it doesn't have any of the bones or anything, it's just a clear liquid, I'm going to add some things in to really make it hearty and delicious. And I've decided, based on what I had in the refrigerator, I had some summer squash that, you know, is fine, but was another couple of days and I probably, you know, would have had to say goodbye, and I hate to waste it. So I've cut up summer squash and I've cut up carrots. This is the remaining meat from my chicken. This is another cup of chicken. Since I'm making a big pot of soup, I'm going to want a little bit more protein in there. So I'm going to rinse and drain. This is navy beans, a can of navy beans. You could use kidney beans. You could use black beans, garbanzos. Any of them would be delicious in this soup. So I'm going to drain, rinse, and add these beans. I'm also going to add a starchy thing. I've got several choices here. I've got ditalini pasta, which are these little tiny pastas, which are good. I've got rice. This is the rice that's ready to eat, the brown rice that you can just tear open the pouch and add that in. I've also got some long grain rice that I would make sure that I cook ahead, because any of these starchy things, when they cook, they're like sponges, and they absorb all of the stock and all of the water, and they become kind of gloppy and gooey. So in order to avoid that, cook your starchy item ahead of time in a separate pan, drain it, and hold on to it till the very end when you're making soup. So today I decided to kind of go in an Italian direction, and I'm using dry tortellini. This one happens to be filled with pesto, which is, you know, basil and garlic and a little bit of cheese. So it's going to add a lot of flavor to my soup. I've also got Italian seasoning, so I'm going to add some of that into my stock. I've got some diced tomatoes. These happen to be fire roasted, which are really, really flavorful. And I also have, there goes my rice. I also have a can of corn, and this one happens to be reduced sodium. So look at all the vegetables I'm going to get into my soup, which is really exciting. I'm going to save my pasta for the last minute. My chicken can go in at the last minute. And then I've also got a little fresh parsley, because I happen to have some in the refrigerator. And that's really going to make it beautiful and give it a nice fresh flavor.
So we posted a link in the chat to our video from last week where we kind of talked about the anatomy of a soup. And really that if you want to, you can start by sauteing some onions or other those really potent sort of aromatic vegetables, but then do just what Lynn's talking about. Add your broth, add your veggies, add your protein, grains at the end already cooked, and then fresh herbs or fresh greens, which kind of wilt quickly. Add those at the very end, right before serving. So we will also post a recipe for a turkey, and I believe it's a turkey and rice soup. So again, if you need to have a recipe to get started, this is one that kind of follows that protocol. Obviously, you could substitute the chicken, but Lynn's also given you a great idea of how you can kind of choose your own adventure and make what looks like amounts to a really delicious soup there.
Well, speaking of delicious soup, would you like to see it?
Oh, I would.
All right. I've got another pot on the stove. I'm running out of room on my stove. But this is what this soup looks like, and it's really thick and delicious. I've got greens in there. I've got all kinds of good stuff. So let's move this tray out of the way. There we go.
Oh, that does look great. Oh, that looks so good.
So my lunch is all ready. And really, you know, when you add the pasta, that starchiness does help to thicken your soup as well. So this is going to make a really hearty lunch. And once my casserole comes out of the oven, I'm just going to be one happy camper.
Excellent. Great. So we do have a few images of additional recipes that you could check out from our Eat Smart database that could be used with, apologies, that you can use rotisserie chicken in. So this is our chicken power wrap. This is a great lunch, uses sort of similar to the taco, it uses hummus as well as the chicken so that you can have the two sources of protein to really fill you up, and then you can stretch the chicken further, as well as veggies. That's a really yummy one. The hummus has so much flavor that you don't really need any extra condiments. The other one we thought of was this warm chicken and asparagus salad. So when spring comes around, which it will eventually do, this is a great way to turn that into sort of a main course salad, using fresh asparagus and some greens, but then topping with the chicken to give you that protein. And the last one we wanted to share was chicken Waldorf salad. And you can find all of these on our Eat Smart website. So speaking of which, we'll get to that in a second, but I do want to also let you know about our upcoming episodes. We are back next week with the Thrifty Winter Kitchen. We're going to be talking about sheet pan dinners. And this is a term I hadn't really heard much of until recent years, but the idea of like assembling a full chicken with your mains and your sides, a full dinner with mains and sides all on one sheet pan that can cook all together in the oven. So we're going to be taking the same approach to that rather than strictly following recipes, creating your own. And then we're going to talk about slow cooker meals at the end of the month. And then stay tuned for plans for later on in the winter, moving into spring. We have our email address there if you have any questions or suggestions in advance. And please, if you're watching this on Facebook, make sure you not only like our Facebook page, but turn on notifications so that you get alerts when we go live. There's our Eat Smart database we've talked about a lot. That's where all those recipes can be found. Facebook page, YouTube, same message. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on alerts so you know when we go live, and make sure you follow us on Instagram as well. So before we sign off, Lynn, can we get one last look at that delicious soup? And we also had knowing that you also made the taco and you had the casserole in the oven. I think that you did justice to that chicken by stretching it into all of these delicious meals. And, it sort of took out the messiest, hardest part of cooking the chicken. And then you can just have fun combining it with other ingredients. So thank you so much for your culinary wizardry.
And it's a pleasure to join you.
And thanks to everyone who joined us. Thanks for your comments and suggestions. And we hope to see you all back here next week for another episode of the Thrifty Winter Kitchen.